Welcome to this special episode of the Informing Choices mini-pod, produced in collaboration with One Day in 2050. Ecofascism, Leviathan or Lifejacket of Humankind is a multi-author book featuring 36 top futurist voices who have come together to explore our climate future beyond purely climate data through the lens of ecofascism. But what is ecofascism? Ecofascism is a political ideology that merges elements of environmentalism with authoritarianism or fascism. Ecofascists may advocate for a return to a more natural state, often at the expense of individual freedoms and human rights. The premise for all the stories in the book is this. The year is 2050. Temperatures have risen by over 2 degrees Celsius. Global population has reached 9.8 billion. Pressure on natural systems is at its peak. A new global movement has arisen. A totalitarian system has been enforced based on the minimum climate footprint on every aspect of our society. Today, we welcome founder at Ideas for Change, Javier Creus, to talk about his chapter in the book. Javier, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Steve. It's very nice being here.
So your chapter, The Great Earth Day Referendum of 2050, an ecofeminist calls for a global referendum including animals and plant votes. Sounds absolutely fascinating and so creative. Take us briefly through your chapter. What story are you telling here?
Well, the story is about a global party that starts with artificial intelligence governance. And it starts in a very small little town in Africa, and then expands to the continent. And in the following years, you can see that society thrives and nature thrives as well. So many countries adopt it until it's accepted all over the world. And then one day, the artificial intelligence calls this global referendum. During the time, people have observed that this artificial intelligence is limiting their consumption or is limiting the hot water they can spend in a shower, or they're changing their combustion bikes for electrical bikes. So they have an easy feeling about it. But then comes the day of the referendum.
It's absolutely fascinating. And I really like the idea that the innovation started in Africa because it's not uncommon to see innovative and creative ideas, particularly using current technologies, emerge in what we typically call the developing world, is it?
Well, I believe that the developing world has a chance to leapfrog our
Mm.
technologies. If you look at Africa right now, there's a lot of innovation in mobile. You don't need the same infrastructures we used to need, because you can have decentralized infrastructures for communications, for energy, for mobility, for so many things. So I believe that these societies that have demographic force, they have young people among them,
Yeah.
might leapfrog our societies in some other dimension.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. I love that, and of course, typically maybe it's these ideas, these innovations emerge from the part of the world that has most to lose through the climate chaos.
Yeah, the part that has more to lose, the part who are paying the worst costs of all these movement, and where ingenuity is spread as in our society. So we can believe on creativity as long as people have a chance to get educated, to get to open source hardware and software and light communications. They can do very many things, and they are already doing.
Absolutely fascinating. So what was your motivation behind your chapter in the book? Why did you choose that story?
Well, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, and since we think that intelligence is a kind of pyramid, you have sentient intelligence, the one that keeps us alive, the intelligence from plants, and then you have the intelligence from animals who can run away from problems, and then you have rational intelligence on top of that, as if it were a hierarchy. And a way of looking at artificial intelligence is rational intelligence squared. And we've seen already the threats and the challenges that applying rational intelligence has brought us to our world. So
Mm.
I think that we should think intelligences not as a hierarchy, but as a system. And I'm very interested in how this mixture of inorganic intelligence, which is artificial intelligence, but organic intelligence, because organic intelligence is the intelligence of life. And the champions of life are plants. Plants are everywhere in the world. They were here before us, they'll be here after us, and they have a very peculiar sort of intelligence, which is intelligence developed to stay in a place. We
Mm.
humans, we can run out of the problems, but plants have to stay in the place. So they developed a different strategy for life. They are modular. If you break a plant into two, you have two plants. If you break a human into two, you have nothing at all.
Yeah.
No, they have decentralized every leaf, every root in a plant has 15 sensors. They sensor for humidity, they sensor for temperature, they sensor for chemicals on air or on earth, and they first react and then communicate. There's no central
Mm.
intelligence. And I believe that in the deployment of artificial intelligence, we should look at the intelligence of plants, that architectural model, the distributed modular autonomous intelligence of plants should be our model for the deployment of artificial intelligence, as we are in a moment where we've already conquered the planet and we cannot all, maybe a few can, but we cannot all get out of the planet. So escaping is not a strategy anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. I love that phrase, intelligence of life. And the other thing that strikes me, you seem to be talking about biomimicry at a kind of a different level, whereas we've spoken, I guess, in the past about biomimicry, where we look at the physical attributes of something from nature and replicate that in something physical that we make. But there's biomimicry in the ideal of how plants survive, and applying that to artificial intelligence is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that this architecture, this engineering of plants, of being
Yeah.
distributed, autonomous, modular, is the way to go because we've seen the risks of centralization.
Hmm.
We've seen the risk of data centralization among corporations. We've seen it with social institutions. So either we provide all these new capacities to each individual, or I believe we are taking too much risk.
Absolutely fascinating. I really, really love that. So, what do you want readers to do, to consider, to think about after reading your chapter?
Well, the whole trick is that this global referendum is on surface called among humans.
Hmm.
But what humans don't realize is that living sentient beings and plants are as well voting. So it's the first referendum that's not only global among humans, but it's as well plants had a vote on about how to rule our world and fixing priorities and establishing limits and new ways of growth, maybe outcomes wouldn't be as we think right now.
That's absolutely fascinating. I really love that idea of introducing a referendum to all the living things on the planet, because actually, normally these are decisions taken by people, and we've proven to be not very good at making some of those decisions, haven't we?
That's it.
Mm.
I mean, we can be mistaken, we can be fooled, we can put our trust into people or maybe organizations, political parties who don't deserve it. I mean, and that's been truth for democracy all over. It
Mm.
started with very few people voting. It was extending itself. Now we're thinking, for example, in making 16-year-olds have a vote in very many things around our world. We're thinking of putting future generations in the seat with government. So we are expanding our notion of which opinions, preferences are relevant for our governance.
That's absolutely brilliant. I've thoroughly enjoyed Matt chatting to you,
Thank
Javier,
you.
and I really love the basis of your chapter in the book. I'm sure lots and lots of people are going to really enjoy it. So thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. It's been a pleasure contributing to the book and a special pleasure meeting you as well.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the other episodes of this series of podcasts on ecofascism and all our other episodes on the Informing Choices mini pod. Do let your friends and colleagues know about the podcast, and there'll be another episode along very soon.